Are you ready? Let's go. Ready?
Ready.
Yeah, ready when you are.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay, you ready?
I'm ready.
Holden Shepherd, Heidi Anderson, Jan Latta, Alison Patterson, welcome to my little show.
Why do you call it a little chat show?
Jan Nichols, Sam Eichen, Annabelle Smith, Donna Mazza, Rebecca Watson, Jonelle Fraser, Tracy Jacobson, Adam Wallace, Monique Mulligan, Matt Glover, Karen Young. I don't even know where I'm going with this. Welcome to my show. I've just finished speaking to Teena Raffa Mulligan. Now, Teena has written countless books and she's just got a new book out now helping kids to start that creative writing process. But our conversation went that way, where we actually spoke about a spiritual awakening that her father had and how that affected Teena and her direction of writing. We also speak about the publication process, Teena gives her advice, and also the future of kids' books. So join me as we get to know Teena Raffa Mulligan. Teena Raffa Mulligan, how are you going? So glad to have you on my show.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Josh.
Now, look, you're up to about book 565, or is it 21?
It's in the early 20s.
Wow, you have been so prolific. Now, this new book is about encouraging kids to find their inner creative spirit, to learn to be writers. What is how does the book work? What's the book about?
Basically, it's my session that I have done over the years with junior primary kids, and I decided to make it into a picture book. So obviously when I go into a classroom, I start asking the kids, where do you think writers get their ideas from, and how can you make an idea into a story? We follow the process, and then we do a group activity. I have a whiteboard or a smartboard set up, and the kids themselves create some characters, give me some suggestions of a little bit about each character, and then we come up with several ideas of what could happen to them in a story. So I decided a long time ago that this might be worth putting into a picture book for kids perhaps who are being homeschooled, or for teachers and parents to use with kids who perhaps want some guidelines on how to write stories. And when COVID hit, I didn't really feel like writing anything new. So I abandoned my half-written middle grade novel and my half-written romance and put this little book together, and I had fun doing it. So it was my COVID lockdown project.
Uh-huh. And was it easy to translate from a workshop into an actual book?
Yes, it was. I had a long time ago written a picture book version about it that I'd sent to a couple of places who said, yes, great idea, but they weren't interested in picking it up. So it was in my filing cabinet. So I just took it out, had another look at it, and the whole thing was to make it as simple as possible. And actually put some activities in there so that while I'm not with the kids saying, okay, give me some ideas, give me a character's name, tell me 5 things about them, who else is in your story, when does your story take place, the book takes them through that process, and it's intended to be filled in by the child with or without help.
Excellent.
And I just thought it would work.
Wow. Okay. So it really takes kids through that step-by-step unfolding of a story, takes them through the character development, plot, and all that sort of stuff.
Yes, in a very simple way. So it's not for kids who've got a pretty good understanding of how story writing works. It's for probably pre-primary to perhaps year 3, depending on the kids themselves.
Okay. I think that's kind of good, because sometimes when faced with, like, I want to write a story, but you sort of go, where do I start? What do I do? How do I... And this just looks at it really simply, breaks it down and takes the reader or whatever through that really nice, simple step-by-step process. And I'm assuming by the end of the book, they've already got the core elements of what they need to write the story.
Exactly. So then they can go off and they can write their story, and they know something that they can do next time when they want to write a story.
Fantastic, fantastic. So now, where can people? Actually, no, I'll wait till the end of this interview to let people know where they can get this book, because I want to know, because you run the workshop and you've written this book. How important do you think creative expression is for kids?
Vitally important. We need to express ourselves creatively in whatever way that might be. And it doesn't matter how old we are, whether it's story writing as it is for me, or whether it's gardening, cooking, sculpture, art, whatever it is, human beings need to have creative expression. I think it's just integral to our mental and spiritual well-being that we have an opportunity to express ourselves some way creatively.
What do you think happens if we don't?
I think there's something in us that becomes stifled, that blocks off us fully being able to enjoy ourselves and experience life in a more fulfilling way, I guess.
I think we've become a grumpy pants, don't we?
I used to get incredibly cranky when I wasn't writing something.
I know what you mean. Because what would you say to a parent whose, say, son is maybe, 5, 6, doesn't even like reading, but maybe seem frustrated, or maybe like sport. But what would you say to that parent about the importance of getting that child to find a way of expressing themselves?
Good question. I'd probably just encourage them to try all sorts of different creative outlets, whatever that is, until they find one where their child is comfortable and enjoying it, because it's not a good idea to push kids in any particular direction. We need to allow them to find their own way and to find what sort of creative expression suits them best. And for some kids, they're pretty clear from an early age what it is. I knew from the time I was very, very young that books and writing were my passion, but also I was into ballet, I was into dance, and wanted to try music and singing and everything. But some kids take a little bit longer to find what it is gives them enjoyment. So as a parent, all you can do is keep offering and let them find their own way.
Just test different things, experiment and all that stuff. Yeah, okay. So where did your passion for writing come from? You said it as a child, but what stimulated that?
I grew up in an extended family of natural storytellers. So on one side of my family, there were Italians, and on the other side, there were English. And from the time I was very small, I loved listening to them telling me stories about their lives. And once I learned to read and discovered imaginary adventures, and it just took hold of me. I do believe we come in with certain tendencies and certain passions that are either nurtured or not when we're very young. And for me, the storytelling and the love of books and stories, it was just there from the start, and I just followed it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because for you to actually gravitate towards that, because I know a lot of other kids would have just gone bored, oh, granddad's telling stories again. I'm going to go to my room and play with my train set. But for you, you've just gone, wow, it's triggered something in here, hasn't it? So I believe your father was a big influence in that.
He was an incredible influence on my life. Dad wrote. I always remember Dad writing, but his writing was very different from mine. His was spiritual writing, and he, during his lifetime, wrote reams and reams of poetry and essays and longer works that were all based around his spiritual awakening when he was in his early 20s.
Can I ask what happened? What happened with the spiritual awakening? What happened?
Yeah, sure. When he was in his teens, he was a committed atheist. He was born into an Italian family, so obviously christened a Catholic,
Mm.
but wasn't going through the church process all through his life. And when he hit his teens, he discovered science, and he did not believe in a God at all. And then when he was in his 20s, he started reading the books of Krishnamurti and Paul Brunton. And they were very well-known early spiritual writers who had very big followings. They came from slightly different perspectives, but essentially the message was the same, that there is something beyond this surface life that we live, and we all have access to it. So he started meditating and reading all of these books, and the way he describes it, he had a breakthrough, and from that time on, he was very much involved in living the sort of spiritual life that he felt was the right way to live. So he wasn't connected with any particular religion. He didn't go to church. He loved having discussions with people who came to the door from various religions and encouraging them to ask questions. But as a child, the influence that that had on me was that I was encouraged to question everything and to always look at my attitudes and where my ideas were coming from and to find my own way. So we didn't go to church either, but we were very much surrounded by this spiritual influence. So he used to share his writing with me, and I used to share mine with him. So once I grew up and had my own family, Dad would ring me up and he'd say, oh, I've written a letter to the local paper and they've published it, because he'd write about whatever was happening in the world and turn it around to how we needed to live in greater harmony and be more gentle with each other, and that there was a possibility of peace if we all looked at how we as individuals were living. So we would ring up, we would share our writing, and it was just a very different writing path, but we were both very much involved in sharing ideas and communicating those ideas with other people.
Wow, it's amazing that you could share that gift of writing with each other, and you grew up in a household where writing was normal, was an accepted thing to do. So your father sort of gave you permission that writing was okay to do under any circumstance. And I find that a lot of people who go down that spiritual path or who have that awakening, they steer away from religion, and it's very much an inward looking sort of practice where they look at, how do I think, how do I feel, and it all brings it back to the self, which I think is one of the major things. That if we could all do that, look at inwardly and look at how we present outwardly, then a lot of the problems of the world should hopefully be solved in a way. And I love that's the way your father was thinking. That's the spiritual path he was on.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, as a young woman, I was so idealistic. I really thought that we could change the world if each of us changed ourselves, because we can't change anyone else. We can only look at how we respond to things and how we live and how we behave towards other people. And I had no idea that all this further down the track, the things that are going on in the world have not improved. We're not living in harmony. I can't see. I'm still hopeful, I'm still optimistic, but unfortunately, human beings are very slow learners.
Yep.
And the world is not the better place that I hoped it would be by now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like I can't even add to that one, Teena, because it's like, yeah, you just look around us and go. But then again, I sometimes for myself, instead of, like say you've spent a day looking at Facebook and you've watched the news and you just go, oh, I can't believe what's going on. Those times are just good to sit back, for me anyway, personally, reflect and bring all my energy back to me again instead of throwing it out there and being distracted by left, right, what's on the news, yada, yada. Bring it back here, sit with a tree, sit in nature.
I love trees.
And just bring it back in and just hold your energy back within yourself. And I think that's all we can do sometimes, isn't it? Really. And then learn to manage our own thoughts and emotions and our own energy and just be in that space while the world may be chaotic around us.
Exactly. I mean, what else can we do? We're very fortunate here because we are in a beautiful place. We've been relatively untouched by COVID. We're not affected by the sort of devastating wars that are going on elsewhere. And we can be very appreciative that we can still lead normal lives and enjoy the close connections with our families and our friends, and just have an appreciation of this wonderful natural world and this experience of being alive, because I think it's the most amazing experience that we can have, is to be alive.
Yeah.
Regardless of what life throws at us.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that. Now, look, I mentioned before at the top of the interview that you've published lots of books, not maybe hundreds and hundreds, like I said, but you've done some different. You've published in many different ways. Okay, so what advice would you give to young aspiring writers about how to get published and which avenues to take?
It depends on the person. For me, I still prefer the traditional path to get picked up by a publisher who will look after the publication and put the book out and distribute it and all of that business stuff that takes a lot of time and energy and knowledge and expertise. But it's incredibly competitive to get published. It can take a very long time. And as you get older, you sometimes realise that you don't necessarily have years to wait for someone to decide that it's a yes for that story.
Very slow process. By the time you send submissions off, wait for a response. And then if you do get a response, then it's the whole editing process can take months again. It can take years. And you're right.
Exactly.
Like, I'm aging already. Like, hurry up.
Exactly. I want to be around when the book comes out. But seriously, I think the best thing if you want to share stories to a wider audience is to write the best story you can. And that means work on your craft, learn as much as you can about the publishing industry, connect with other writers, because only other writers really understand what's involved in writing a book, regardless of whether it's a picture book or a full-length novel. And then try different routes and see what works for you. Also, it helps not to be locked into a set idea of what sort of a writer you want to be. You can think, okay, I want to write books and I want to have a best-selling title and I want to win awards and all the rest of it. But perhaps that's not the way for you. So what you think is a book might work better as a short story or a poem, or you might find your way writing for magazines, journals, newspapers. So it's a case of being aware of what sort of writer you are and what sort of process suits you as a writer. There's a lot of emphasis right now on sitting down every day and writing as many words as you can. And if that works for you, then go for it. But if you're the sort of person that it doesn't work for, then that's okay too. I'm not one of those writers now who sits down every day and writes for a set time and produces books to order.
And that can be quite depressing for someone watching on, going, I can't do that. And they go, I'm not a writer, I'm no good. And that can really affect, the self-esteem by, I can't do it. Because sometimes, no matter how many times you sit down at the computer or sit down at the page, nothing comes.
Exactly.
And that can be, quite, it can be a bit of a setback for someone. It's like I like your idea of don't pigeonhole yourself as like I'm a kids author or whatever, because I find that sure I write kids books, but I also write nonfiction for adults, and who else? What else? What I write next? I don't know. That's the thing. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
I think the other thing too is it's very hard not to compare ourselves to other people's success and achievements and output in this era where we're so connected to everyone via social media. And you can easily start to think, oh, I'm not good enough. Like you said, you think I'm not a writer. But everyone's not the same. And we need to step aside from that and think, well, okay, maybe I don't publish 12 books in a year. Maybe I only do one, but maybe I do a whole lot of other things like grow plants, cook wonderfully creative meals, paint pictures, spend time with my family and friends. We just need to accept that creativity is not something you can turn off at will. I really feel we need to get our mind out of the way most of the time if we fully express ourselves creatively.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more there. We are our own worst enemies in that regard.
Definitely.
Because we have these huge assumptions and expectations on ourselves. And as you said, when in this connected age of social media, and you see someone on Twitter, on Facebook, and hey, I've just got picked up by this publisher. Hey, I've just won this award. Hey, I've just been doing these great events. And then you're sitting back in your office, sitting at a blank page going, I'm worthless. I'm useless. And that can be really debilitating. Whereas what you're saying is focus on yourself, focus what you can do, focus how creativity wants to express itself in you.
Good line. I couldn't have said it better.
Well, sometimes I can be a writer. I don't know. But I like that. And it can take on many forms. As you said, you can write one book or write a magazine article, but it's also the other things. It's being with family. It's cooking a great meal. It's playing with a dog, learning to play violin, or, oh no, please don't learn to play violin. No, oh no, I can do it now. But it's those things that come from the heart. It's like in my Find Your Creative Mojo book, it's like your heart doesn't want you to do anything perfect. It doesn't want to show off. It doesn't want to do anything. It just wants to express itself. And when we get out of our own way, we can let that happen.
Exactly. We need to get out of our own way. And that's probably been one of my biggest challenges, because I spent years and years in journalism, have done a lot of work editing other people's work as well as my own. And it's been an invaluable skill, but I find now it's a block to my creative expression, because when I first started out as a writer, I knew nothing. And I simply let the writing pour out at me. And now it's a different process altogether, because I find it very difficult to switch off that editor side of my brain. And also there's so much awareness now that if you want other people to read your work, you have to write certain things, you have to write in a certain way. So what I'm trying to do now is step back from that, and if I don't write anything new, that's okay. I can keep working on the things that I've got on file that I can knock into shape and put out and find readers, perhaps. But if I do feel like writing something new, I'm hoping that it will come from a place that isn't so focused on finding a publisher, finding readers, and who knows, it might be entirely different from the sort of things that I've been writing all these years.
And I think
we'll see.
And allowing that space to happen, you never know. As you said, you never know what will come out. And I think that's the joy and the surprise, isn't it? Allowing that. Okay, let's just see what's going to go on here and see what happens. Now, what do you think is the future of kids' books? I know I've had this discussion with a few people, and the kids' literature world is sort of changing very rapidly. I was talking to someone, and they were saying instead of being a children's author, they're a children's content creator. What are your thoughts?
Okay. Story's important. It's always going to be around for all of us in some form or another. And those forms do change. Kids' books, I think, will hold their own. I mean, look at ebooks. Kids are still more leaning towards an actual book, particularly younger kids. They like to have something they can hold because there's a tactile experience as well. There's that sharing experience. It's not the same to sit next to a child and share something on a screen as it is to share an actual book. Books have been around for centuries, so I do think they'll survive, but I also think there'll be lots more choices in the way we share stories. We're seeing that now and we'll continue to see that.
Yeah,
and the technology changes all the time, the things we can do with technology. Who knows?
I know, and that's the thing with Generation Alpha at the moment. The kids are in primary school, and the kids coming up behind them. You know, that they've grown up with with a tablet in their hand or a phone in their hand. So for them, that's the first go-to device as opposed to a book. And it's like, okay, how do we create that balance of creating content for where the kids are, which is on their tablet, on their phone, and you can't say no because that's their life. That's for them. It's like when we were growing up, books was that for us. But it's like creating that balance between, okay, here's a physical book and here's your tablet. What's the same story that we, as creators, we want to create the story? How can we present that in many different forms? And I think that's going to be the interesting challenge over the next few years.
I agree, yes. And we'll just have to see where it goes.
Exactly. But meanwhile, you have got your fabulous book, You Can Be a Writer, which is going to help so many kids find their creative expression and learn how to write and go, I can do this. So where can people get a copy and find out more about you, Teena?
I have a website, www.teenaraffamulligan.com.
I'll put it underneath here.
Yes. Yeah. There's all the information about all my different books and my writing talks and a little bit about me. So that's all online. I'm also on Facebook. I have an author page, and the book is available online from various retailers. Novella Distribution is the distributor. So just Google it. You Can Be a Writer, and some link will come.
Is there an ebook version?
No, I'm not going to put this one out as an ebook because it's the sort of thing that I want kids to actually
physically use pens, pencils, all that sort of stuff. Okay. I like the reasoning behind that. Look, Teena, thank you so much for joining me, and your insights have been incredible, and I'm a lot more the wiser. So thank you so much, Teena.
Thanks for having me, Josh. It's been a pleasure.
What are we gonna do?